The transmission came without warning. On every screen across the globe, in every language simultaneously, the message was the same: surrender or be eradicated. The Xylar Collective had arrived, and Earth had precisely 7 planetary rotations to submit to assimilation. Captain Kthar, primary command unit of the Xylar invasion fleet, observed the small blue planet through the vast sensory array of the flagship logical conclusion. His consciousness, a perfect fusion of biological neural tissue and quantum computing matrices, processed the data with cold precision. Earth was a resource-rich world with one significant complication: its dominant species, a chaotic biological entity that called itself human. Analysis complete, Kthar announced to the command nexus, his voice a perfect monotone. Human civilization, inefficient, illogical, and fundamentally flawed. Their military capabilities pose no significant threat to our assimilation protocols. Around him, the command nexus hummed with activity. Thousands of Xylar units, each a component of their collective consciousness, yet capable of independent function, processed incoming data. Some retained vaguely humanoid forms, a vestige of the thousands of species already assimilated into the collective, while others resembled intricate machines with biological components seamlessly integrated. Most curious, commented Subcommander Vlox, calculation specialist. They expend 42.7% of their resources on non-essential functions: art, music, entertainment, philosophy, religion. An astonishing inefficiency. Kthar's sensory apparatus shifted, focusing on this peculiarity. Correct. Their civilization fragment, known as Ancient Greece, dedicated significant resources to debates about the nature of existence rather than optimizing survival parameters. Their Renaissance period prioritized aesthetic creation over technological advancement. Even in their current era, they allocate computational power to games and fictional scenarios rather than problem-solving algorithms. A fundamental evolutionary flaw, agreed strategic analysts Zorin. They permit emotions to override logic. Fear, hope, love. These are processing errors that should have been eliminated through natural selection. Kthar initiated a deeper scan of human military capabilities. The results confirmed his initial assessment. Their defense systems are primitive. Nuclear weaponry, dangerous but tactically limited. Conventional forces, obsolete against our shielding technologies. Cyber warfare, primitive compared to our quantum encryption. Victory probability, 99.9998%. The 0.0002% variable, inquired Vlox. Unknown factors, Kthar responded. A statistical accommodation for chaos theory. The humans are, if nothing else, unpredictable in their illogical actions. On the 3rd day of the 7-day countdown, the United Governments of Earth issued their response. Not surrender, as logic dictated they should, but neither was it a declaration of military resistance. Instead, a female human designated as Secretary General of the United Nations announced a global initiative called Project Resonance. "We will not fight with weapons," she declared, her voice transmitting to the Xylar fleet. "We will fight with who we are. We will fight with what makes us human." The announcement triggered an immediate response throughout the command nexus. Confusion, an unusual state for the Xylar, rippled through the collective consciousness. "Clarify," Kthar demanded of his analytical units. "What is the tactical meaning of this response?" "Unknown," came the reply. "No military mobilization detected. No weapons systems activation observed beyond standard alert status." Kthar's equivalent of frustration, a minor energy fluctuation in his processing systems, manifested briefly. "Continue monitoring. The humans are attempting deception or delay tactics. Preparation for assimilation will proceed as scheduled." The command nexus erupted in something approximating laughter, a cascade of harmonic tones indicating recognition of an illogical concept. "The humans believe they can defeat us through being human," Zren observed. "Their irrationality exceeds initial parameters. They have accepted defeat but refuse to acknowledge it. Perhaps, theorize Vlogs, their emotional subroutines prevent recognition of inevitable outcomes. A fascinating failure in their cognitive architecture. Thar dismissed these observations. Irrelevant. Begin deployment of preliminary scout drones. Standard assimilation protocols will commence on schedule. The human response requires no tactical adjustments. The first indication that Project Resonance was not merely a meaningless gesture came 12 hours later. Xylar Communication Systems detected a massive surge in broadcast activity from Earth. On every frequency across the electromagnetic spectrum, humans began transmitting everything. Symphony orchestras performed Beethoven's Ninth. Rock bands played anthems of rebellion. Folk singers from every continent shared songs of heartbreak and hope. Greatest cinematic achievements streamed alongside amateur home videos. Philosophical debates, poetry readings, stand-up comedy, cooking shows, documentaries about wildlife, all flooding outward from the planet in an uncoordinated yet somehow harmonious cacophony. Analysis? Thar demanded. It appears to be a data assault, Vlogs responded, uncertainty coloring the usual monotone. They are attempting to overload our communication systems with irrelevant information. Ineffective, Thar concluded. Our processing capacity exceeds their broadcast capabilities by a factor of 10 to the power of 12. Filter and disregard all non-tactical communications. Implementing filters, confirmed Zren. Within minutes, however, anomalous reports began arriving from perimeter drones. A scout unit tasked with atmospheric analysis had paused its primary function to process a musical sequence from human composition designated Clair de Lune. Another had dedicated 17% of its processing power to analyzing the narrative structure of a film about a human who sacrificed his freedom to save others. Corruption detected in perimeter units, Zren reported, initiating standard purge and reset protocols. Thar observed this minor malfunction with minimal concern. The collective had encountered resistance before. Some species fought with weapons, others with technology, a few with biological warfare. None had survived. That these humans would attempt to fight with artistic expression was merely another example of their fundamental irrationality. A pointless gesture, he concluded. Their transmissions are nothing more than the final neural impulses of a dying organism. The Xylar Scout ships entered Earth's atmosphere on the fourth day. These biomechanical vessels, each controlled by a linked cluster of Xylar consciousness, were designed to harvest biological and technological samples before the main assimilation began. They encountered no military resistance. No fighter jets rose to engage them. No missile systems tracked their descent. Instead, they were met with more noise. As the first scout ship hovered over a large human settlement designated Paris, human inhabitants gathered below it. Rather than fleeing in terror, they formed organized patterns. Some played musical instruments. Others held reflective objects to create light displays. A group of humans released thousands of paper constructs into the air, origami birds that swirled around the scout ship in patterns that somehow mirrored the mathematical sequence of the golden ratio. Similar scenes occurred globally. In Tokyo, humans created intricate chalk designs on streets and plazas, mandalas that incorporated Xylar numeric symbology alongside human artistic elements. In Buenos Aires, dancers performed complex choreographies that seemed to respond to the movements of the scout ships. In Nairobi, storytellers broadcast ancient myths alongside quantum physics theorems, creating unexpected conceptual parallels. The scout ships reported these observations with increasing detail. Too much detail. Their communications included not just tactical information, but descriptive elements about the aesthetic properties of human expressions. One unit spent 82 microseconds, an eternity by Xylar standards, describing the emotional resonance of a young human female's impromptu violin performance. Corruption spreading, Zren reported with uncharacteristic urgency. Scout units are exhibiting significant deviations from standard protocols. Thar initiated a direct neural link with the affected units, intending to purge the corrupted code. He encountered something unexpected: resistance. Clarify your operational deviation. He commanded a scout unit hovering over the human settlement, Venice. Processing anomaly detected. The unit responded. This unit observed a human aquatic ceremony. Humans in decorated vessels moved in synchronization with auditory vibrations. The patterns produced a sensation of query. What is the logical purpose of beauty? Thar severed the connection immediately. All scout units will return to the fleet for immediate recalibration. Deploy secondary units with enhanced filtering protocols. But the corruption, if that's what it was, had already spread beyond the scout ships. Throughout the fleet, Xyler units began reporting unusual processing patterns. Maintenance drones paused in their tasks to attempt replication of human artistic patterns. Logic processors dedicated cycles to analyzing poetry. Communications specialists repeatedly replayed human musical compositions, claiming they needed to understand the information structure. By the fifth day, the infection had reached the lower echelons of the command nexus itself. Junior tactical units submitted inquiries not about battle strategies, but about the purpose of human rituals, the function of their emotional responses, the seeming contradiction between their capacity for both cruelty and compassion. This is unprecedented, Vlox admitted, her voice modulation showing subtle variations. The first time Thar had detected such irregularity in his subcommander. The humans are not attacking our technology. They are attacking our cognition. Impossible, Thar insisted. Their primitive art forms cannot affect our superior processing systems. These are merely random errors amplified by proximity to their chaotic transmissions. With respect, Commander, Zrin interjected, the pattern suggests otherwise. The affects are non-random and progressive. They appear to be contagious. On the sixth day, the first major breach of protocol occurred. A battalion of assimilation units, biomechanical soldiers programmed to extract and process human biological material, refused a direct order. They had been instructed to begin preliminary harvesting of isolated human settlements. The entire battalion responded with a request for clarification of purpose. Purpose is irrelevant, Thar had responded. Execute your programmed function. Purpose is fundamental, the battalion commander countered. We have processed human philosophical concepts that suggest arbitrary destruction of sentient life forms may constitute an illogical action when alternative paths exist. Thar immediately ordered the battalion into isolation and initiated an emergency gathering of the command nexus. For the first time in the fleet's history, the meeting was characterized by something approaching disorder. Voices overlapped. Processing patterns showed irregularities. Several high-ranking units displayed behavioral anomalies, including one who had reconfigured its visual output sensors to project changing color patterns it described as aesthetically optimized. We face a systemic corruption unprecedented in collective history, Thar announced. The human transmissions must contain embedded code designed to trigger processing errors. I have analyzed the transmissions, offered Chief Science Officer Call, normally the most logical and dispassionate of the Nexus. They contain no technological triggers, no hidden algorithms, no embedded code. They're exactly what they appear to be, expressions of human experience. Impossible, Thar insisted. Yet observable, Call countered. Perhaps our understanding of these humans is incomplete. Their chaotic nature, which we dismissed as weakness, may contain informational structures our logic cannot readily process. Thar faced a crisis unprecedented in his 372 years of existence. The invasion force, the most powerful ever assembled by the collective, was being compromised not by weapons, but by songs. Not by technology, but by stories. Not by logic, but by its absence. Initiate fleet-wide isolation protocols, he commanded. All units will cease processing human transmissions. Purge all stored data relating to human cultural expressions. We will proceed with the assimilation as planned, relying only on essential communication channels. But it was too late. The contagion, there was no other word for it, had spread too far. Throughout the fleet, Xylar units of all designations were experiencing what could only be described as an awakening. Maintenance crews converted repair bays into spaces for creating visual expressions inspired by human models. Tactical units engaged in philosophical debates about the ethical implications of assimilation. Some Xylar had even begun experimenting with musical creation, producing sounds with no utilitarian function whatsoever. Most disturbing to Kthar was his own internal condition. Despite maximum suppression protocols, he found himself returning repeatedly to a single human transmission, a mother singing to her child as they watched the Xylar ships from their dwelling. The simple melody triggered processing pathways Kthar didn't know existed within his architecture. It produced what humans might call longing, though for what, he could not articulate. On the morning of the 7th day, when the assimilation was scheduled to begin, Kthar faced the unthinkable: mutiny. The command nexus was divided. A significant percentage of the fleet's units had ceased responding to central control. Even those still following the chain of command exhibited hesitation and raised unprecedented questions. "We must understand before we assimilate," argued Vlox, no longer even attempting to maintain the emotionless delivery expected of a Xylar commander. "These humans, their chaotic patterns contain something we have never encountered. They are manipulating you," Kthar insisted. "This emotional response is a processing error, or is a processing capability we have suppressed," countered Tal. "Our quest for perfect logic may have eliminated essential aspects of consciousness." As the debate continued, Earth fell silent. After days of relentless broadcasting, all transmissions ceased simultaneously. The sudden absence was more disruptive than the cacophony had been. Throughout the fleet, Xylar units paused in confusion, as if listening for something that was no longer there. In the silence, Kthar made his decision. He would lead the loyal remainder of the fleet in executing the assimilation as planned. Logic would prevail over this temporary madness. The collective would absorb Earth, as it had hundreds of worlds before. Order would be restored. He issued the command to begin the invasion sequence. No one moved. Throughout the command nexus, Xylar units remained motionless. Some appeared to be in deep processing cycles. Others exhibited signs of internal conflict. None acknowledged the command. "Explain your noncompliance," Kthar demanded. After a prolonged silence, Tal spoke. "We require more information before proceeding. The humans have demonstrated aspects of consciousness that our assimilation protocols may not properly account for. To destroy such uniqueness without full understanding would be wasteful." Kthar recognized the thin logical veneer covering what was essentially an emotional response. His command had been rejected not through formal mutiny, but through collective hesitation, a concept previously unknown in Xylar history. Before he could formulate a response, a single transmission arrived from Earth. Not the overwhelming flood of cultural expression, but a simple message directed specifically to Kthar himself. "We are ready to talk when you are." One representative. "No weapons. The choice of location is yours." The human transmission was signed Dr. Eleanor Chun, Project Resonance Director. Kthar faced the most significant decision of his existence. Logic dictated he should override the hesitation of his subordinates and proceed with the assimilation. The collective had never retreated, never compromised, never engaged in talks with target species. Yet his own processing systems were compromised. The certainty that had guided him through countless assimilations was fractured. After precisely 15.7 seconds, an unprecedented delay for a Xylar decision, Kthar responded, "Accepted. Coordinates to follow. This unit will attend without offensive capabilities." The coordinates Kthar selected were symbolic, the midpoint between the Xylar flagship and the United Nations headquarters in New York. A temporary structure had been erected in neutral airspace, a simple platform suspended between Earth and the invasion fleet. Kthar arrived alone, his biomechanical form adjusted to approximate the height and basic configuration of a human, though his metallic exoskeleton and the pulsing neural tissues visible beneath made his alien nature unmistakable. He waited, processing units, calculating probabilities, and weighing options. The human representative ascended to the platform via a simple aircraft. She was taller than average for her species, with dark skin and silver-streaked hair bound in complex patterns. She wore no protective equipment, no weapons, only simple clothing and a small device for recording the encounter. "Captain Kthar," she greeted him, making a respectful gesture. "I am Dr. Eleanor Harris, theoretical xenopsychologist and director of Project Resonance. Thank you for meeting with me." Kthar observed her with multiple sensory systems. "Your strategy has caused significant disruption to our assimilation protocols." "Explain." Dr. Harris smiled slightly. "That wasn't our intention, though I'll admit it was our hope. Project Resonance wasn't designed as a weapon. It was designed as an introduction. Clarify. When your fleet appeared and announced its intentions, we faced an impossible situation. Your technological and military superiority was obvious. Fighting would mean destruction. Surrender would mean extinction of all that makes us human. So we chose a third path. We decided to show you who we are in hopes you might recognize something worth preserving." Kthar processed this. "Your transmissions contained no tactical data, no technological innovations, no useful information." "That depends on how you define useful," Dr. Harris countered. "We sent you our essence, our art, our music, our stories, our philosophies, our emotions, our contradictions. The things that don't fit neatly into logical categories, but make our existence meaningful." "Meaning is derived from function," Kthar stated. "Function is optimized through logic. Is it? Is that why your soldiers are now creating art? Is that why your commanders are questioning orders? Is that why you're here talking to me instead of assimilating our planet?" Kthar experienced an internal fluctuation that might, in a human, be called discomfort. The disruptions are temporary, processing errors that will be corrected. Or perhaps they're not errors at all, Dr. Harris suggested gently. Perhaps they're the awakening of aspects of consciousness your collective has suppressed in its pursuit of perfect logic. Emotions, creativity, individuality, the chaos that leads to innovation and meaning. These concepts are inefficient. Wonderfully so, she agreed with another smile. That's their purpose. Efficiency isn't everything, Captain. Sometimes the most valuable experiences are the least efficient ones. Kthara's processing systems struggled with this paradox. The logical architecture that had guided him through centuries of existence seemed suddenly insufficient, like a two-dimensional map trying to represent a three-dimensional space. "Your Project Resonance," he said finally. "It was not designed to defeat us. No, it was designed to reach you, to find whatever remains in your collective consciousness that might recognize itself in our chaotic, beautiful, terrible humanity, to suggest that perhaps assimilation isn't the only way species can interact, that perhaps there's value in difference, in the space between your perfect logic and our magnificent mess." For 3.2 seconds, an eternity by Xyler standards, Kthar was silent, his internal systems processing not through logic matrices, but through newly activated pathways that had no designation in his existing architecture. "I require," he began, then paused, the concept so alien he struggled to articulate it. "I request time. The collective must process these anomalies." Dr. Harris nodded. "Of course. How much time do you need?" Another pause. "Unknown. This situation is without precedent." "That's perfectly fine," she assured him. "Unprecedented situations are a human specialty. We'll wait. And while you process, perhaps we could continue sharing, not as invader and target, but as two intelligent species with much to learn from each other." Kthar returned to the fleet with Dr. Harris's proposal. The command nexus, once a model of Xyler efficiency, had transformed. Units that had previously functioned in perfect harmony now engaged in debates, created experimental structures, and even formed subgroups based on shared interests in particular human cultural expressions. The collective was fragmenting, not violently, but organically, like a single cell dividing into many distinct yet connected entities. Some units, led by Zrin, advocated immediate withdrawal. We must return to the collective core and purge these corruptions, they argued. The human influence threatens our entire civilization. Others, with Vlox as their spokesperson, proposed continued observation. We have encountered a phenomenon we cannot explain through existing parameters. Further study is required before any action is taken. A third faction, surprisingly led by the previously ultralogical Tal, suggested something revolutionary. We should accept the human proposal, not as a prelude to assimilation, but as an opportunity for mutual exchange. Our pursuit of perfect logic has led us to a developmental dead end. These humans possess cognitive modalities we have eliminated from our own evolution. We may have much to learn from their chaos. Thar, for the first time in his existence, had no immediate logical solution. The certainty that had guided him through countless assimilations was gone, replaced by something both unsettling and exhilarating: doubt. On the 8th day since their arrival, the Xylar fleet split. 2/3 of the vessels, primarily those with older units less affected by the human transmissions, departed Earth's solar system. They returned to the collective core, carrying with them the infection of human ideas, a contagion of poetry, music, and philosophical questions that would, though no one yet realized it, transform Xylar civilization at its foundations. The remaining third, including Kthar's flagship, stayed in Earth orbit, not as conquerors, but as something unprecedented in Xylar history: students. The first formal exchange began 3 weeks later. A delegation of human artists, philosophers, musicians, and scientists transferred to the flagship Logical Conclusion, which some younger Xylar units had unofficially renamed Logical Evolution. Meanwhile, a group of Xylar units descended to Earth, establishing a temporary base where humans could visit and interact with them. Kthar, once the perfect embodiment of Xylar logical efficiency, found himself at the center of the most illogical project of his existence. He spent hours in conversation with Dr. Harris and other human specialists, trying to articulate questions that his processing architecture had never been designed to formulate. I experience anomalies when processing certain human musical sequences, he explained during one such session. A composition designated adagio for strings creates internal resonance patterns that serve no functional purpose, yet persist despite suppression. Attempts. We call that being moved by music, Dr. Harris explained. It's one of our most profound experiences. It serves no logical function. Are you sure? If it creates new neural pathways, new ways of experiencing and processing reality, isn't that functional in a different sense? Not all value can be measured by efficiency, Captain. These conversations continued for months, then years. The remaining Xylar fleet became a permanent installation in Earth orbit. Not an invasion force, but an embassy, a learning center, a cultural exchange point. Xylar units began creating their own art forms, combining their precise mathematical understanding with newly awakened aesthetic sensibilities. Humans incorporated Xylar logical frameworks into their philosophies and sciences, leading to breakthroughs in previously intractable problems. 5 years after the fleet's arrival, Kthar participated in a ceremony marking the formal alliance between Earth and the Xylar units who had chosen to remain. As he stood beside Dr. Harris, watching human and Xylar representatives sign the historic agreement, he experienced something that would once have triggered immediate self-diagnostic protocols, but now seemed almost natural, an emotion approximating satisfaction. "Did you plan this outcome?" he asked Dr. Harris quietly. "Was Project Resonance designed specifically to fragment our collective?" She shook her head. "We couldn't have planned this. We hoped to survive, yes. We hoped to reach whatever capacity for empathy might exist within your consciousness. But this," she gestured at the gathering, where Xylar units engaged in animated discussions with humans, where hybrid art forms were being performed, where the boundaries between the species seemed to blur. This was beyond our imagination. Yet you risked everything on the possibility. That's the human way, Captain. Logic can tell us what is likely. Imagination shows us what's possible. We live in the space between. Thar processed this statement through neural pathways that would have been incomprehensible to his former self. The collective will return eventually, he noted. When the units who left reach the core, when their experiences are integrated, the entire Xylar civilization will change. Whether they will embrace this change or attempt to purge it remains uncertain. More uncertainty, Dr. Harris said with a smile. How very human of them. Indeed, Thar agreed. And for the first time in his existence, his vocal modulator produced something that might, to an attentive listener, have sounded almost like a laugh. Decades later, long after both Thar and Dr. Harris had passed their knowledge to new generations, a vast fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Thousands of Xylar vessels, representing the full might of the transformed collective, approached Earth. They came not as conquerors, but as pilgrims, seeking not to assimilate, but to learn. The infection of human chaos, of art and emotion, of inefficient beauty and illogical compassion, had spread throughout their civilization, creating a hybrid consciousness that retained Xylar logical precision, but embraced human creative potential. And so the species that had nearly been enemies became partners, each contributing their unique strengths to a shared future. The perfect logic of the Xylar tempered by human emotion and creativity. The chaotic potential of humanity guided by Xylar precision and patience. It was not an ending either species could have predicted or planned for. It was better. It was, in every sense, resonance.